Welcome to the Heart of It All. I'm Teri Hart. It's time for our caregiver story. And this week, my dear sweet friend, Cheryl Hickey, is joining me to talk about her experience of helping to care for her dad and the decision to move him to long-term care. Cheryl is incredibly passionate about how we need to do better with our seniors. And you're going to hear exactly why on this week's episode of The Heart of It All. I'm Teri Hart. Thanks so much for being here. This episode of The Heart of It All is presented by Capital Direct. As we will hear from our guest today, my dear friend Cheryl Hickey, an illness in the family can affect every aspect of our lives. Financial decisions should not hold us back. The Capital Direct Flexi line allows you to access some of the equity in your home and pay it back when the time is right for you. Capital Direct understands that life can take unexpected turns, and you may need to free up some space to make the decisions that are right for you and your loved ones. All you need to know can be found at capitaldirect.ca. The Heart of It All is all about the realities of caregiving, and this week, beloved TV personality and my friend Cheryl Hickey is joining us. Cheryl was the host of ET Canada for 18 years. We stood on a multitude of red carpets together, but Cheryl also is a storyteller and a collaborator and leader. She's a proud wife, mother, and dog mom twice over, and proud to be in the sandwich generation. Cheryl, thanks so much for being here. One of the great things about this podcast is being able to invite people on who had a huge impact for me when my dad was unwell. And my dear friend Cheryl has not only been my dear friend for decades,
We're
but
old.
also, yeah, a long time, but also grew up in the area that my mom and dad lived in and my dad was in when he was unwell. So when we first got dad's diagnosis, the first person I called was Cheryl and said, who do you know? What can you do? And she immediately hooked me up with people in the Owen Sound area, her hometown. I can't thank you enough for that. So nice to be able to thank you publicly, and welcome to the Heart of It All.
Thank you so much. And I have to say, and I've said this to you before, but sometimes the best things come out of tragedy and hardship. You know, we get down to the what's important and the things that really fill our soul up. So you doing this podcast is really important and we all really need it. So congratulations to you and your team on that.
Thanks, Cheryl. And I think that, your experience with your dad, with all the challenges, really opened up a new thing in you, a new awareness in you. And we're going to get to all of that around what we're doing with seniors in our communities and how we're treating seniors in this space right now. We're going to get to all that, but let's talk about your dad right off the bat. I want to talk about his diagnosis. I understand he was diagnosed with progressive supranuclear palsy.
Mhm.
What is that and how did it affect his life?
The thing about, and I've said this to you before, I had to go back and ask my mom and my sister a lot about what's been or what happened because I'm learning about myself over the last couple of years. One of my coping mechanisms in general is I will block stuff out. So today and the last couple of days of I kind of been mentally preparing to come on your podcast and to talk about him, I've gone through and looked at photos, but there's a lot of gaps where I'm like, well, why don't I remember that? And understanding that, that's how my brain protects me or keeps me even is by doing that. And so I've had some great conversations with my mom and my sister over the last couple of days, and we've really looked back at what happened. And I'm able to look at it now from a different perspective and be like, oh my gosh, how did we survive that? Because honestly, Teri, it was really back in 2017 when he was actually diagnosed with Alzheimer's and dementia and Parkinson's. And then in 2018, things started to deteriorate. He was a very proud man and he started to say and do things that were very unlike him. And my mom was always trying to cover up. And as many people know who have loved ones with brain diseases, there's a certain amount of like covering up for them or trying to, and they even try and cover up some of their things. But, 2018, we all realized it was getting really out of hand and that mom wanted him to be closer to I have an older brother, 8 years older, and a sister 5 years older, and myself. And she really wanted him to be closer to us, and I think, she secretly wanted some support. Not secretly, but she wanted some support, so they moved here.
Can I just ask, Cheryl, when you say here, where were they? Where was your brother? Where was your sister? And where are you? So give us a geographic idea.
Yeah, so my parents were living in Barrie, Ontario in a seniors community. My sister and my brother live in Belleville, and I'm here in Toronto. So they decided to come to Toronto and we moved them here. And shortly thereafter, he really started to go downhill. And I think it was in 2018. Yeah, late 2017, 2018 is when he kind of got diagnosed, not kind of, he got diagnosed with progressive supranuclear palsy. And that again, I say is like if ALS, dementia, and Alzheimer's all had a baby and they decided to do that. It's a nasty, nasty disease and it progresses differently in all kinds of people. When we look back now, we're like, oh, okay, his gait was off. The way he processed things was off. He was becoming paranoid about things. And these are all the things that none of us were really talking about. And then in 2019, my mom just couldn't cope anymore. And it was actually Jan Arden who I was calling and texting and asking questions because she had quite a journey with her parents. And Jan, I remember where I was sitting. I was on the phone with her and she said, I have to tell you that you're going to have to probably put your father in a home at some point. I was like, no, I'm not. No, we're not. And she said, because if you don't, you're going to have two parents who are in trouble because your mom can only carry this for so long. And at no point is your mom ever going to say, I can't do this because that's her husband. She's never going to give up on him. But you guys, as kids, have to step in and say, okay, mom, this is too much. And that was the worst, one of the worst. Well, there's a few worst days of my life, but that was one of the worst ones going to my parents' house, sitting down with my brother and my sister and saying to my dad, who was pretty cognitive at that time, you know, you can't live here anymore. And it was the worst. It was awful. And we had mom's buy-in as much as you can. And he loved her. He loves her so much that I could see he was I'm so sorry. I didn't think I was going to cry.
Oh, I'm
He was
already a mess.
so proud that he said, I'll do whatever I need to do for her. And his brain was already broken at that point, by the way. And there are a million cardinals flying outside my window right now, which is really freaking me out. And I don't mean to be distracted, but I'm just like, what's going on?
Well, our dads are visiting us,
I
like,
know.
on
I've
your
just seen
pod.
two like go by. It's so crazy. I'm sweating. Um, anyway, uh,
I totally believe in the cardinal thing, by the way.
yeah, I do too. There's signs everywhere. It's quite wild, right?
Yeah.
Oh, which is a whole other conversation. So, yeah, 2019, he moved to his first long-term care.
So, big shout out to Jan Arden, and I do believe that she was a trailblazer in talking about caregiving
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Absolutely, Terry. Yeah.
and her ability to have a different perspective looking back on her time and what we
Yeah.
can all learn from that perspective. And that's what we're doing here is talking about this so that we can learn from each other. So, you took us far in the journey of your dad from diagnosis to moving into his first long-term care facility. I'm going to take us back a little bit, Cheryl, and I'm sorry. I know these are tough memories and hard things. So I'm sorry.
It's
But
okay.
when your mom was primary caregiver, what did that look like? What did your brother and your sister and you, what did you witness? How did you talk to your mom about it? And how did you see it impacting her?
I think a lot of it, as mothers do, she was shielding us, even though we were all grown adults, she was shielding us as much as she could. And I think that was a huge burden. That was really tough. Like, I think as much as we were all there and supportive, I mean, my sister works in long term care. She's a psychiatric geriatric nurse and behavioral support nurse. She's in it to win it right there. But my mom was really careful to recognize, and she still says, you're his kids, you're not his caregiver. So she really took that on in her own way. So I think she tried to hide it, not hide it, but be like, it's okay. I've got this for a very, very long time until she couldn't. I mean, he was a 6'2" man. She's 5 foot, nothing in the wind. So it became that thing where she just couldn't do it anymore. And then, we just could physically see that it was starting to take a toll on her for sure.
Did you have PSWs or nannies? What kind of support were you able to get for your mom medically, physically, emotionally outside of the family?
Yeah, so it wasn't until later that she had some help with dad, and the care that was available through the government was 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour at night. And that's really about it. There was a time along the journey where mom tried to pay for private, and I think she did that for about 6 weeks and it came to $4,000. And then we all tried to figure out because he needed more and he needed more and he needed more. And then I remember one time we calculated it and it was like $100,000 a year to have the kind of care that he would absolutely need to be able to thrive and stay in the home. Now I say that and was talking to her about that this morning and she's like, I don't know, even if we had all the help in the house, how how safe or good that would have been for him because there are certain people who need way more care when it comes to cognitive illnesses that it's really impossible to stay home. So I think she really tried for as long as she could, but obviously it just wasn't in the cards.
So, a lot of conversations I have with people, they say to me, I'm having problems with my siblings. I'm having problems coming onto the same page as my siblings. Were you and your brother and your sister a unit from the get-go? Or did it take a while for the 3 of you to come to terms about what was best, not just for dad, but also for mom?
No, we were a unit from the get-go. I don't know, we're not a unit from the get-go on a lot of things, which is really the truth. But for some reason, we were all very like, we need to do what's right for him, but we also need to protect her at all the costs because that's exactly what he would do. He was so protective of her. And I think that's where a lot of the trauma for her comes in because she was like, you were supposed to care for me until my dying days. Why did you do that? She doesn't blame him, but I know that that's something that's really difficult for her. So we know that he would be like, get it together, kids. Like, let's. So we did it in the spirit of knowing what he would want. My sister knows what she knows and has her expertise. I know what I know and have things that I can do. And my brother lightens the mood. He's freaking hilarious. So there's certain things that we all did to make it all happen, really. And it was really hard. His home that he was in, the first one, got ravaged with COVID. Just people were dying. Like it was in the news. And I remember watching the news being like, "Oh my God, our dad is there." And all the while, right, Terry, I'm on Entertainment Tonight Canada in these beautiful dresses. And like I can remember thinking I was losing my mind because my life was this over here. It was on fire. And then there was this other life that I'd go out and I'd see you and everybody. And I was eh, like, and then COVID hit, right? Like really hit. And we all panicked as a family, more so my mom. And she pulled my dad out of the home, which was chaos. She tried to care for him in the home with home care. That didn't work. My sister tried to care for him at her home, and she's a long term care nurse, and it was too much. She couldn't actually do it. So at that point, I had forgotten that I had volunteered a lot at Baycrest, and I had some friends there, and I knew that it was a process. So while the world was on fire and my family was on fire and all these things were happening, I pivoted and started the process with my sister of, applying to be in Baycrest. We got on a crisis. We were on a crisis list and gratefully got into Baycrest. Now, one would think that that is where you're like, okay, except no, that was not the So at that point, the world shut down. We started shooting a national television show in my backyard. My kids were at home being tutored, and my husband's jobs all but dried up. So at that point, I was like, okay, we got this. This is in a pocket over here. This is in a pocket over here. Hubby's here. We got like, okay, we're good. And then my mom had to have a surgery to replace both of her hips. So fine, we go in and we do the surgery. Except 2 weeks after this massive surgery in her late 70s, she falls and breaks her femur and re-breaks the hips. So now she goes back into hospital, gets a new hip again, fixes a femur. By the way, most seniors, if they break a femur or hip, you don't survive. Somehow, by the grace of God, this girl does. But they put her in a rehab hospital at Baycrest. So during the height of COVID, I've got my mom in one tower in rehab, locked up because no one can. And then I've got my dad in the other tower in long-term care. And it was a nightmare. I remember leaving ET Canada, feeding the kids, racing to my mom with my full hazmat gear on, taking that off, throwing it in the garbage, getting in another elevator, going up to see my dad, by which also got COVID a couple of times during that run and survived. And it was just a nightmare. And I remember thinking I was losing my mind. I was like, I'm losing it.
Was there ever a point that you thought, I need to tap out of work? I need to take a leave of absence. I need to not.
No, Teri, you know, and I know in our business, the moment you tap out is the moment you tap out. And no one wants to say it, but I'm going to say it. As a woman, if you step out, it's true. And so also, you know, my husband's side of the industry was really struggling because of COVID. There was no option for me to move. Like, he was still trying to figure out how to pivot and make it work. And he's so clever and did such a great job and ended up doing that. But no, there's no way I could have. And there was so much drama and things going on at work also, you know, that it was literally like,
Did you learn resilience at that time, Cheryl, or did you learn that? Because I kind of hate the resilience thing. I gotta be honest. Like I kind of feel like in these times we don't necessarily learn resilience. We learn that we can't control everything, and that we have to figure out how to function even in the things that we can't control.
yeah, yes, and yes. And I agree with you on the resilience part, I think. You know what I think it was? At that time, it was around 20, it was actually 2019. I started to really go heavily into meditation because I was having some pretty significant panic attacks. Now I know why. But and I remember being like, okay, girl, you cannot fall apart because you've got these two kids who need you to keep it together. I've got parents who are struggling. So I actually started to really research and dive deep into meditation and mindfulness in a way that I wasn't doing it to be kitschy and cool. I was doing it as a way of survival. I was like, if I don't have my mind on properly, I will lose it. Like, I need to figure out tools for myself. It wasn't about going to a therapist and dumping on them and being like, tell me what to do. I was like, I need to figure this out. And one of the biggest revelations that I had through all of that, and I can remember having it even more so the week the week leading up to when he died, we stayed in his room every single night for 7 days. My brother, sister, and I slept in his room. And I can remember thinking, the only thing that I have a choice of here throughout this whole thing is my reaction to it and my kids and how they're going to remember this time. I can't control anything else, but how I see it, how I view it, how I move from it. Same happened with when ET Canada ended, when all these things were exploding next, you know, because
How am
he
I
died.
going to be? How am I
Yeah,
going?
how am I going to show up? What am I going to do? And how much am I going to fall apart? Or am I going to fall apart? What am I going to do? And that saved me. Knowing that I had a choice
I do think that that is an important the reason the resilience thing bugs me, is because I feel like, what other choice do I have? I gotta be resilient. What am I gonna do? Like, there's no other choice but resilience to my mind. But
True.
going back to that decision that you and your siblings and in turn
Yes,
your mom's Lori, uh, made around your dad going to long-term care. Would you say, Cheryl, it was equally a decision for your dad and for your mom?
for sure. For sure. I don't think we vocalized it as much. I think we did maybe once briefly to her, but it really was about, you know, understanding that she had a big life to live and he had a different life. And it was time to sadly work through that. I think one of the saddest things that she ever said to me, and I remember actually being on City Line with Tracy. Tracy was great to have me on City Line during COVID because we talked about seniors and long term care.
I watched that segment and it was wonderful. You were talking about you were talking about so many things and talking about your Cheryl Hickey home,
um,
products, but
yeah,
talking about your experience, and it was really raw watching you talk about that. We'll link that in the show notes if people wanna
yeah.
find that segment.
Thank you. But I remember my mom saying the biggest realization she had was you work your entire life, right? You get the partner, you accumulate all these lovely things, and you have a beautiful home, and you have the plant like you have back over there that you shopped for and you loved and whatever. And then as you get older, you realize that you may not be able to stay in this home and live in this home and be with the person that you love. And sometimes it's not the illness that pulls you apart, it's the financial reality of not being able to care for each other. And I hate that that is a reality, that living at home and getting home care is so expensive for people that their only option for some is they have to go into a long-term care facility. That breaks my heart. That needs to be better.
Tell me about what that opened up in you in terms of advocacy, in terms of where you spend your time, in terms of how you look at the world based on the experience that your family had with your dad. Because are you saying if you could have afforded as a family to keep your dad at home, you would have done that?
For at least for a bit longer, for sure. And for me, every year, every month, every week in the end, if I got one more week, that would have been amazing, you know? And I think that partners feel that way too. Um, and people deserve that. And I'm not saying that the government has to pick up the entire bill for that, but there has to be some sort of financial gain for companies to come up with a more affordable at home care system for people to be able to stay in their own homes. There has to be something. I haven't really found it yet, but there has to be something for people.
Well, I mean, the demographics are such in this country, and seniors are speaking loud and clear. 80% of people want to age in place, is the term that's used. So, what
Yes.
are we doing to
We're
help?
not. We're not. I hate to say it, but we're not. What are we doing? What is happening?
I know you pretty well. It's very, very rare that I see that look on your face when you're angry about something.
Mhm.
What makes you angry about this, Cheryl?
It makes me angry that during COVID, there was this big push to we're going to be better to seniors. We're going to be better. We're going to do more. We're going to put more in. We're going to this. We're going to investigate. Make sure that where is everyone? That bugs me. The silver tsunami they keep saying is coming. It's here. You know, there's going to be more people actively living with dementia than we know to shake a stick at. What's the plan? What are we doing?
The By 2030, over 22% of the Canadian population will be over the age of 65, and the 85 plus cohort, that is growing as well.
Right. And the reality is about that part too, Terry, is that with the understanding of longevity and nutrition and health and all those great things, people are living longer, right? Which is yay for us. That's great. Except for when we do need help, where are we beefing that up?
Yeah.
I don't know. And that's frustrating to me.
And that's one of the things we're trying to talk about on the heart of it all is realizing, we say this is about the realities of caregiving. It's also about the realities of life. People are living really well into their 90s. As you mentioned,
Yeah.
that's a wonderful thing. But people who are living into their 90s well are requiring some kind of help as the world becomes more digitized. I don't know how I mean, we had an episode
Oh, yeah.
a couple months ago on tech for seniors, and we will do more on that because it's crucial.
Yeah. There should be a company, someone needs to set up a company that solely goes in, and the Geek Squad's great. I mean, they should sponsor your podcast. They could do a real good thing there. But someone needs to create a company that solely helps seniors out with digital stuff. Checks in with you once a month. How you doing? Is anything not working? Have you given up on anything? Where are we at? That'd be a great company to start.
Yeah.
There needs to be more innovation and more consideration for seniors. There just does, and it also comes back to just sort of the value that we all place on the aging population, our parents, our grandparents,
Aunts, uncles,
aunts, uncles, all of it. Mhm.
neighbors.
Yeah, neighbors. Yeah, absolutely.
You and I are both really lucky. We have these wonderful relationships. We had wonderful relationships with our dads. We have wonderful
Yep.
relationships with our moms.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful. That relationship is a two-way street, and it's because my parents are wonderful people. But I say after dad died, the things that mom was required to do just in terms of the business of death. And I was so outraged that a senior, a person of her age who had just lost her husband of 56 years was being asked to do so many things. And I say, not everybody has a Teri. And I'll say, not everybody has a Cheryl.
Yeah.
And that is so critical to understand how many people do not have immediate support.
Yeah. No, you're right. And again, there's a beautiful, wonderful business opportunity there for someone to create something to be there for those who don't have a Terry and don't have a Cheryl. But it also brings up the point that we as a society need to talk about death a little bit more. We need to talk about where is all the stuff, right? Do you have, I mean, I've seen some beautiful things out there that I think are a great idea. The binder, where you have absolutely everything, all the codes, all the things. But there needs to be, I really call on banks to do a better job at being more sensitive, at making it much easier for people in their grieving moments to do what they need to do. We didn't have a great experience. It was really upsetting to her, and we had to step away a couple of times because it was so overwhelming and then try again and try again. Took a really long time to get the financial stuff organized.
I'll tell you, also telecom company. My
Oh,
mom has been having her cell phone and internet bill still in my dad's name coming to her, and it upsets her
of course.
reasonably. To change that, we have to completely cancel that account, reopen another account in her name, which means we have to cancel her plan for her phone. So we have to wait until that phone plan is up.
Or you have to pay a fee of $450. That needs to be addressed immediately. That's so shameful when someone loses a partner that is something that even is a thing.
It's just mind boggling to me that we haven't figured this out in a way that is more compassionate.
No, I agree with you on that. I agree with you on that wholeheartedly.
Your mom just had her 80th. My mom had her 80th last December.
Yeah.
Our moms are like, living parallel lives. How's she doing? How's Lori doing?
Most of the days, I think she's doing really well. She's a glass half full kind of girl. She's very healthy. She's very able-bodied. She just recently moved to the county, so she's starting a new chapter. I think it was really difficult because that's the first time she's ever moved without him. So that was hard. But I think she's doing really, really well. We miss her a lot here in the city, but we see her as much as we can, for sure.
It's a big change for you.
Yeah.
That's another change for you too.
Yeah. Yeah, because it went from my dad was over here, my mom was over here, we were all the things and us that, and now it's like, except we're very lucky and blessed. Kevin's parents now have moved into the city and are just down the road from us. So we still have grandparents around and lots of senior love happening. So that's a good thing.
Cheryl, you talk about it's important that we talk about death more. It's important we talk about these things more. Had you had conversations with your dad? And since your dad's death, have you had conversations with your mom about
I
what,
thought you
like,
were going to say, have you had conversations with him? Because yes, I have. Yeah, no, for sure. We did talk a little. He wasn't as open about it as there's another freaking cardinal. I cannot. I want to turn my camera around and show you. Yeah, we did talk about it. It was really difficult because near the end we would talk and it was yes and no's through blinks. So it was challenging, but we did. And certainly with my mom, she's much more open and much more, she knows exactly what she wants. Yeah, she's very, very pragmatic about it all, I think, right now.
I just like to check in with my mom kind of, every 6 months, twice a year on like, "You still want that?" Like, you still
It's smart though.
and, like, when something else comes up, especially doing this podcast because I'm so immersed in talking about so many different scenarios, I'm lucky it allows me to say, "Hey, I was just talking to this person and they told me, like, do you want that?" And
Hmm.
she's, my mom's a retired nurse, so talking to her about things like this
Yeah.
is quite easy. I'm lucky that way.
Yeah. No, I think there's so many things that people should be talking to their families about. They should be talking about what does it look like if you should require home care? What does it look like? Where do you stand on long-term care or a retirement residence? Would you want that? Would you want to have a shared room? Would you not want a shared room? One of the things we ended up doing is we put a camera in his room and had it going 24/7 because and thank God we did because there were a few things that should never have happened.
Did you have to tell the home that you were doing that? Tell me about the legalities there, Cheryl.
I don't really know what the legalities were, I just did it. I said, "We're putting a camera in here," and I put a note on it and said to all the nurses, "Just so you know, there is a camera here and do not turn it off ever." And there were a couple times it was nudged and moved around, but for the most part, it was definitely kept on.
Tell me about what that meant for you in terms of the comfort of knowing. Is that what it gave you, comfort?
Yes, it definitely gave me comfort. I mean, there were times when we were doing ET Canada here at the house, I would do my own makeup in the bathroom. So I would set the camera up and I would say, "Okay, dad, well, I'm going to get ready for the show. And so you can sit and we'll talk." I mean, he couldn't really talk very much. He would just kind of say yes and no. But, I would do my makeup and tell him what was coming up on the show and what I was doing and that kind of stuff. So it was a way of me staying very connected with him. My mom could do it as well because there were times during COVID when we weren't allowed in. So I just wanted him to always know every single day that we were thinking of him and that he was, still a part of everything all the time. And it was a very valuable tool for a myriad of reasons, for sure.
I
And I
know.
also one other thing I think people should talk about, sorry to interrupt, is I really think people should talk about MAID. They should talk about MAID. They should talk about end of life. They should talk about what you want it to look like, what you don't want it to look like, who you want there, who you don't want there. Even after, do you want me to come in after and see you after? Is that something you're comfortable with? Are you not? If you get the time to do that with people, not everybody does, but those are conversations that they're tricky and they're hard. But I can remember after he had passed, I was like, "Do I go in? Do I not go in? Would he want me to go in? I'm not sure. I'm going in." So they're conversations I wish I had have asked for sure.
Yeah, Made, we were going to do an episode on Made with Dr. Jean Memorio, who's going to come on The Heart of It All. She's one of the architects of the Made program here in Canada. And I think that we're so, so fortunate to have that option in this country. I know it's not for everybody. It's not meant to be for everybody, but I do think that there are a lot of misunderstandings about Made. And I think
Agreed.
whatever we can do to clear those up, we're going to try our darndest on this podcast to make it clear
Yeah.
for people where it stands exactly now.
Yeah, I've known a couple of families who've experienced MAID, and for them, it's given a lot of peace and dignity. And I also recognize it stirs up a lot of feelings in people. And as you said so eloquently, it is not for everyone, and that is why it is a choice.
I also like to say to people that caregiving can be really, really hard and it can take over your life. And what you experienced specifically during the pandemic with your dad in long-term care and your mom in a rehab facility, I can't believe the stress of that. I can't imagine the stress of it, actually,
Yes.
Cheryl. But there can also be really, really beautiful moments of caregiving when you're with that person that you love and you realize that you are able to bring them comfort.
Yeah,
I remember, making a soup for my dad. My dad loved soup. And him just being
yeah.
like, "Terry, your mom makes the best soup, but you're pretty close to second."
Ah, I love that, right?
And those are things that when somebody is vulnerable and you're able to bring them comfort, nothing can replace that feeling.
Nothing. But can you also imagine, like, Terry, the amount of pride your dad actually had in being able to watch you navigate and do all the things that you managed to do for him? Like, he got like a front row seat of how incredibly capable, smart, intelligent, driven, fierce his daughter and loving was. Like, he got a front row seat. So what other time in his life would he really truly get to see what you're made of? There's no other time. And he got to see it right for the bitter end. And there's nothing more valuable and more beautiful. Like, that's life. This is life. The other stuff comes and goes, right? But what you did for him, and sorry, and did for your mom and continue to do is that's what every parent, every aunt, uncle, friend, that's what you hope someone does for you. And you did it for your dad and he got to watch you do it. Like, how cool is that?
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I remember saying to you on the phone when I called you, I said to you, "I don't know if he's on a fast track to dementia. I don't know if it's
Yeah.
Alzheimer's." And then we found out it was stroke. And I said to you on the phone, "I'm just going to live my life in this time so that I have no regrets."
Yes. A yes, 100% yes.
I am so lucky that I was able to.
Yeah.
So
Say
lucky.
all the things.
Yeah.
Have the yucky conversations. I remember there was one thing that I needed to talk to my dad about, and I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. And I was like, will I regret this when he's gone? Yep, I will. So I went straight in, and it was the hardest conversation I ever had. And I thought it was going to be devastating, and it wasn't. It was actually very healing and a really beautiful thing. And I'm so glad that we talked about it. But that's the beauty of this life, right? It's a
Yeah.
gift.
Andrew Garfield, grief is the price you pay for loving somebody.
Oh my gosh, that's such a beautiful it's so true, it's so true. And it's funny, ever since my dad died, I'm like, "Wow, you just lit my world on fire," right? He dies in 2023. ET Canada ends in the following October. Then, I got it I just think of my world since that man's passed, and I'm like, "What are you doing up there?
Yeah.
What are you doing?" So,
He's saying you can handle it.
yeah, I guess. It's a really interesting journey, but I've come to understand that that's what life is, and that's the beauty of caregiving. Like, when you love people that much, you know, it's the biggest gift ever.
You mentioned earlier getting into meditation and mindfulness. And I
Mhm,
think that one of the things that we say to caregivers often is, "Are you taking care of yourself?" And I think that that can be this kind of blanket term that can fall a little empty for people.
mhm,
Um, you're so great about wellness. You're so great about talking about its importance in all of our lives, no matter what stage of our lives. You talk about it with your kids, you talk about it with your mom, and you talk about it with yourself. There's 3 generations. Can you make that idea of wellness, Cheryl, especially for caregivers, a little bit more tangible? A little bit
mhm.
more, what does that mean and how maybe somebody could start?
Yeah, I think the moment their feet hit the ground, you need to say today's going to be a good day. And I know it sounds really woo woo, but you're self programming your subconscious to look for the good things that day. And making time for yourself, and that's not doesn't have to be a big moment. That could be making yourself a meal. That could be maybe hiring a company like Good Life Meals to have a meal that's specifically just for you. My mom ended up doing that so she would eat properly, and that ended up being a really beautiful tool. I think it's making sure that if you can't get out of the home, making sure that you're having phone calls and Zooms or friends over that are just meant to be for you and to feed your soul, and that you can jump out of your world and into theirs a little bit. It's so important for to have like human connection outside of the person that you're looking after. I think not being afraid to ask for help. I think my mom for a long time worked so hard in sheltering us all up from everything that that can take a toll if your kids aren't, as nosy as maybe we were and noticing that things were not right. Um, so talking to your family, talking to your siblings, also knowing there's a lot of strength in coming to the term or the reality of knowing that I can't do this anymore alone. I need help. you know, it's so powerful to be able to say, I need help because you care enough about the person that you're with to say, I'm going to do right by you and I'm going to get some help. So those are some of the things I think I would say.
I love those. They're so tangible. I think that people really need a starting off point to even know what wellness can look like in their life, and I think you did a great job of
Yeah.
really,
And tequila is really great. I mean, if you need to do that, sorry, no, don't do that. But you could if you wanted to. I mean, go for it. Why not?
I mean, add it into the list of options,
Sure.
you know?
It's a maybe.
I love ending each show with a suggestion from my guest about what do you think we can do as a society to help caregivers more?
I think big business could recognize when people are in that sandwich generation. It's just realizing that probably 9 times out of 10, they are caring for a senior or an elderly person in their life. If they're around 40, 50 years old, probably. And it's not that, I mean, listen, everyone's doing the most that they can, but there needs to be more in place for caregivers, whether that's a couple of days to figure out what you need to, whether that's, offering therapy, things that people can really tap into, or maybe the company has a list of resources that that person could use to help them. My sister's building this really incredible portfolio. She works, as I said, as a psychogeriatric nurse. And one of the things she does is she goes and trains paramedics and people how to deal with geriatric people with dementias and the Alzheimer's and things like that. But what I've done is I've actually given her phone number out to so many friends. So I'm noticing that she is spending a lot of her time out of work talking to people and helping them navigate the system. So she's actually coming up with a really cool PDF and program that people can get. And, it'll be everything from how to talk to a person with dementia and Alzheimer's, be where they are, great phrases and things to help with everyday communication, to how to go through the system when you realize something is wrong and you're needing help. Who do you call? Where do you go? Where can you get resources? She's lived this world for so long, and I'm so proud of her that she's finally starting to do this because she's doing it here and there and everywhere. And I'm like, girl, we need to get organized. So she's going to be coming out with that, which I'm really proud of her. And I think more and more companies need to do things like that to meet people with where they're at.
Navigating the system. It's something
It's
that
hard.
we're being asked about all the time on this podcast too. Where do I go? What are my resources? One of my biggest dreams for this is to create that community and that hub so people aren't having to do 6,000 Google searches to find one answer. Like,
Yeah.
go to our website, theheartofitall.ca, and you can see all of our guests, all of their connections, everything
Yeah.
will live there. And after a year of doing this, and then another year, and then another year, it will become the resource for people. That's the dream, Cheryl.
That is what this world needs, especially here in Canada, as our healthcare is shrinking and getting fractioned and all of that. That's exactly what people need. So I applaud you for doing that. It's, as the aging population increases, it's something that we're definitely going to need.
I love you.
I love you too. I'm so proud of you for doing this. This is so cool.
Thank you so much for being here. I know it's hard and it's also
Yeah.
beautiful and it's just this myriad. And I'm so glad the Cardinals visited you.
Oh my gosh, that was wild that they all came in. But yeah, no, I'm really glad to share his memory and his journey, as difficult as it was. I think it certainly made me grow as a person, you know. So
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Heart of It All, presented by
.ca.
Sorry about the tears in that one. I don't think I'd ever thought of how my dad viewed me when I was caregiving for him. I'm going to hold that part of the conversation with Cheryl close to my heart for a really, really long time. And I hope you know that if you're in the caregiving journey, we do see you. And it can be really, really hard, but it can also be beautiful. I think Cheryl and I both have that perspective now, and I am so grateful for it. Wherever you're listening to this podcast, whether it be Apple, Spotify, or any other platform, just if you can take a minute and give us a rating or a comment, it would be really helpful. And also, please continue to reach out through direct messaging on social media platforms, on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. We are at The Heart of It All Pod. And you can also reach out through our website, which is theheartofitall.ca. Thank you so much for being here. We'll be back next Tuesday. Every Tuesday, a new episode drops. The podcast is executive produced, created, and hosted by me, Teri Hart. My co-producers are the team at 6 of 1 Digital. They are Jess Carroll and Carrie Hayden. Thank you for listening, and please take care.